Looking to have your day brightened up? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Hashtag Positivity Podcast.
So you'll start with the intro, yeah? As you always do?
Yep. Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning into the podcast. We're recording tonight on location at the AP Academy in East Longmeadow. Really excited about this episode. John, I know you're excited. These guys are a couple of your great friends going back a long ways. We have in the studio, I say that with quotes, Pete Fatse and Nick Ahmed.
What's up, boys? Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Yes,
thanks for
likewise.
coming on.
Thanks for having us.
No, it'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, to your point, Jay, these guys have a ton of history with both of these guys. Nick a little bit more so, and Pete over the last 5 or 6 years. We'll certainly get into that in more detail as we go. Just a little bit of background for everybody. Pete Fatse is the owner-operator of AP Academy with 2 locations, one in Palmer, one here in East Longmeadow where we're filming tonight. And Nick is a Western Mass guy, an East Longmeadow guy, born and raised, and now is the starting shortstop for the Arizona Diamondbacks via East Longmeadow High School and then University of Connecticut, where he and Pete were teammates and became best of friends. So we thought it'd be great to have both these guys on together to talk a little bit about not just their journey through athletics, but in keeping with our theme and what we try to do here on the podcast, talk about kind of what has brought them to where they're at today. Because there are no accidents when it comes to people's success, and so I think these 2 guys really epitomize that. So we can get right into it if you guys are good with it.
Yeah, super excited. Thanks again, guys, for being on the show. I've heard a lot about both of you and excited to dig a little bit deeper and hear what you guys are up to.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So actually, we'll just kind of get started, and this is much more of an open format. So Nick, you jump in when Pete is speaking, and Pete vice versa. Mm-hmm. But Pete, I wanted to start with you. For those of the folks that are going to be listening to this podcast or aren't familiar with AP, tell us a little bit about AP, its inception, sort of the mission now, and where you plan to go and moving forward, and how guys like Nick and other athletes you have are sort of helping you with that mission.
Sure, yeah. So essentially I started AP Academy. Well, it was at the time AP Baseball School as more of just something to kind of keep me occupied through the off season. So I was playing professional baseball and didn't really have a lot of time to work. Obviously was training a lot, so I decided to start kind of training athletes, baseball players, doing instruction. And that kind of matriculated over the last, so that was 2010, so for a couple years I was doing it just part-time. Then I made the commitment to stop playing professionally and kind of devoted all my time and attention to training just baseball athletes. And since that point, we now have 2 facilities. One is our primary, obviously our baseball location up in Palmer, where we have literally hundreds of baseball players coming from all over New England. We have our prep academy based out of that, which services roughly 60 kids a year. We go travel all over the Northeast. Sure. And then more recently with this location, we have a strength and conditioning component. We also have up in Palmer, but our director of sports performance, he is based out of East Longmeadow right now, and we're running our strength and conditioning programs here. So, Nick is obviously, aside from being a really good friend of mine for a long time, he's one of our athletes, him and his brother Mike, and actually quite a few of the local Western Mass professional athletes train here, hockey or baseball. So I guess the mission of what we're trying to accomplish is providing people with a platform to elevate themselves.
Awesome.
Our elevation is
Awesome.
sports.
Sure.
And I think that I'm sure Nick can attest to this based on our mutual experience at UConn. That's one thing we learned pretty quickly in college was that it's you're always and when I designed this, the purpose was to be a part of something bigger than yourself. It's really easy to get immersed in, me. But,
sure.
I think part of why we've had some success is just our model has been to give a lot of our time and energy to people. And like I said, I first really learned that at UConn. I'm sure
I remember
Nick
you
can speak to
guys.
that.
You guys both played there, were well immersed in the culture. But one of the things that still resonates with me is Pete had a chance. He brought a bunch of his athletes, his AP athletes, down last summer I was lucky enough to travel along with him, and the resounding theme through every member of the staff, from the time these guys were introduced to the staff, to their stretch, their workout, all the field stuff they did, and they literally, you guys, you showed our high school athletes. It was a full day as a Division I baseball player, a taste of what you guys lived every day throughout your career. Now, I know for you both left, you left early. You were both drafted after your junior year, and so you didn't finish at UConn, but it was essentially a day in the life, right? And one of the principles that was spoken on over and over and over, and I still use it now with my students, my athletes, and when I go out and speak, is the ACE principle, right? Attitude, concentration, and effort in all that you do. And it still resonates with me even after our trip in the summertime. So I think knowing you for as long as I've known you now, it's clearly a theme of everything that you try to do with the kids at the academy as well.
Absolutely. And like I said, I'm sure one of the things that I was talking to a couple parents the other day about it, and we were talking about, obviously, one of our teammates, George Springer, winning the World Series. They're asking me about the resurgence of just, how successful it's been in the last few years. And I said, to me, it comes down to the consistency and the culture that's been built. And then ultimately, those things on display every single day. So
yeah,
for sure, we learned a lot. I think as freshmen coming in, we were
bring that
hear me all right there.
Yeah,
you
move this a little bit.
Yeah,
I think as freshmen, we definitely weren't too keen on the ACE, and he had another acronym. Coach Penner's there is WIN, W.I.N.
What's important now?
Yeah. We didn't necessarily buy into it while we were at school. We tried to as a group, but we didn't fully understand it, I think, until we're starting to understand it better now that we're gone, and now we're married and have families.
Sure.
And have careers. So it's something that stuck with us for sure, and I'm glad it stuck with a guy like you. It's just something simple to keep your focus on what you can control, and to let those other little things that you can't just kind of fade away, hopefully.
Yeah, and I think it's one thing, I think a lot of coaches, and you guys have been around coaches at every level, but I think so much of coaching is the hooks that you can send your kids, the things that they'll grab onto and that they will make part of their daily business, right? And one of the things you share with your guys all the time is, hey, be a pro. I don't care if you're a sixth grader who just is learning to play baseball but you really like it, or if you are have aspirations of playing in college or even away from sports. You're a fireman. Well, every day when you approach your job, you're a professional, and you've got to do it that way. So Nick, for you, give for the audience, for those of us that, I'm very fortunate. You and I have a lot of history together. We met when you were just a young guy, and I'm still mad at you because you stopped playing football after your freshman year. But that's a whole nother story. He is literally one of those guys. I mean, his path was baseball, but Nick is and was literally one of those guys that whether he decided it was going to be football, he would have been a college-level football player.
Going to make it happen no matter what.
And then he would have probably continued to play after that. Really good basketball player. If that's what he decided he wanted to do, he probably would have done that. Baseball was his avenue. But share with the listeners and the viewers kind of your journey and what brought you to where you're at right now.
Yeah, I think I've been very blessed with a lot of talent athletically, and I just want to make the most of that and essentially do God proud with what he's given me. So I approach every day and give it everything I've got, and it's something Pete and I have been talking a lot about lately. Just the fact that how important your mind really is to whatever you choose to do, whether it's baseball or owning a business or whatever line of work we're in, your mind is so important. And if you believe you can do it, you're going to do it. And you surround yourself with the right type of people to help you do it, it's going to be that much easier. So
sure.
If you believe and listen to those people who tell you can't all the time, and believe me, I had plenty of those people who told me when I was in high school I wasn't good enough to play shortstop even in college, and now I've been playing in the major leagues for 3+ years. So
I remember.
You got to choose who you listen to, and you got to build yourself up and really talk to yourself instead of listening to yourself.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so for the kids out there that listen, that have aspirations of being athletes at the college level, not just baseball, but one of the stories I know about you, Nick, is that a lot of schools, a lot of good schools recruited you, but they recruited you as a pitcher, and you were adamant. You were adamant on the fact that you wanted to be a day in and day out player. Yeah. So what would you share with guys? Is there a balance there between, if you have schools looking at you and you have a chance, to be that 5% kid, that kid that has the ability to play at the next level, At what point do you say, okay, I'm going to go where I'm being offered, or are you in a position as a junior in high school where you can say to a coach, listen, I'm going to go to a program where I'm going to play because this is where I know I'm going to be my best?
So
I know it's tough. It's
yeah,
a
it'd be
tough
a
question.
long answer
It
for me
worked
to
out
really
well for you, but
dig into that deep.
right. Will it work out that well for everybody? You know what I mean?
UConn was one of the only schools who told me, hey, you have an opportunity in that freshman fall, that first semester being on campus where there's no NCAA competition of games. It's just inter-squads and practices. We're going to give you the opportunity to do both, to pitch and play in the field. So for me, I jumped at that opportunity. You can attest to my personality and still compete. I don't like sitting around and being on the sidelines. And as a pitcher, starting pitcher especially, you only play once a week or once every 5 days. So
sure.
That's just really not in my DNA. I don't like to do that stuff and sit back and watch my team play. So I jumped at that opportunity, and I'm glad I did. And I just had that belief in myself, and I knew deep down that even if I wasn't good enough in the way people were evaluating me at the time, I knew if I put in the right type of work, it was going to pay off.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, so, whether you needed to develop the skills, you had the mental, the mental was already there for you. You knew what you wanted, how you were going to get there, what you needed to put into it. So, like he said, you could have been dropped into any position. You know where you wanted to get, and that's where you're going to be. So that's
for
pretty
sure.
awesome.
It's definitely not something I knew every detail along the way of how to get there, but I knew the what. I knew what I wanted to do. I just needed to find people to help me with the how. And my career to this day, I wouldn't be where I am without Pete and the time we spent together, hours and hours and hours. And can't tell you how many phone calls we have over the course of the season, breaking down video or talking about something, even if it's off the field, to help me with my game. So you got to surround yourself with those people who are going to help you and build you up and get you to that how of where you want to go.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. It's a great transition to talk to you for a sec, Skipper, as we like to call him. Was it tough for you to transition from, because you are that type A guy as well, was it tough for you to transition from being I would assume, having never been a professional athlete, but I know in being a father. No. Well, I mean, I miss, it's other people's fault, really. I miss some opportunities that.
That's the mindset that you really have to carry forward. It's everybody else's fault.
No, absolutely. I mean, isn't that what we're talking about here on the hashtag positivity?
That sounds kind of.
Oh, this is the positivity?
Negativity.
I'm blaming everybody else.
Hashtag
Don.
negativity.
Don didn't tell us this
Donnie's
was gonna be
here.
positive.
Hey, Donnie. Hi, Donnie. Donnie's here. We took the mic away from Donnie this week because he was very rude to us last week.
Oh, man.
Skipper.
Yes.
Sorry, I
was
didn't mean
saying.
to interrupt you.
all
No,
good.
you meant to interrupt me.
Right.
Was it tough for you to transition? Because I would imagine as a professional athlete, you have to be selfish in your preparation, not just in season, but in the off season. It becomes harder when you have a family, when you have, I mean, you both are married with kids. When you started your business, I remember you were working in a really, really small area. Your office was an old closet, and
Literally. Yeah.
No, I mean seriously, and you were grinding it out, seeing kids 1 hour after. How do you transition from being that athlete to really eating that humble pie because you believe in what you're doing, but now working with, I mean, if you look at a guy like Nick and you have other pros that train with you in the off season, how do you balance the fact that you guys are family in many ways? You're brothers, we're in each other's weddings.
Yep.
You spend time with each other in the off season. How do you balance that with being his coach? And how do you stay in a position where Nick Ahmed could get coached by anybody in the country that he wanted to coach him, right? Mm-hmm. Major League Baseball player has the resources, would be able to do it. How do you find that balance? And does it work better, you think, because you guys have so much history, because you know him?
That's great. It's a great point. I mean, so getting back, I guess, to the first part of the question in terms of the transition. So I think for me, I was able to transition out of professional baseball because I started to ultimately get content with who I was. For a while, I really wasn't sure of what I was going to have the ability to do. And, I had a lot of success at UConn, and I got to pro ball and kind of got kicked in the teeth a little bit. And
reality check.
Right. And I remember, I tell everybody this, the most important moment of my career was when I got released and I was sitting in an airport blaming everybody else. This guy had less RBIs than me. This guy didn't hit as high as I did. And kind of sunk in as I'm sitting there by myself. There's nobody else but me right now. And it was one of those gut check
Then
moments.
what do I do?
Yeah, and I'm just sitting there. I got off the phone with my dad, and he's trying to console me, and I'm on, my girlfriend, well, my wife, my girlfriend at the time is trying to console me, and I'm sitting there, thinking to myself, this guy maybe didn't like me, or maybe somebody didn't stand up for me in a meeting or something. Like, what the heck could have happened?
Did you define yourself as a baseball player?
Yeah, and that was it. It's like, well, I define myself as a guy. In my opinion, what happened was I kind of let the thought that being a professional was good enough. Like, I had made something. Like, I was here, and I got content. And what I came to realize is if I wanted to stay in the game of baseball, I had to figure some things out. I had to figure out what made me successful at UConn. I had to reconnect with a passion that I had when I was a kid, because that's the only thing I ever wanted to do.
Was it gone when you were released?
It wasn't necessarily gone. I struggled to. Like I said, I think I let the professional nature of things kind of take over. I felt like it was never.
Sure.
You don't expect it to ever end, and then when it does, you're kind of, you don't know what to do. So, I ate some humble pie, went home, I worked out with Coach Andy Baylock, who's been down at UConn for years. He's a football advisor now, I think, right, Nick? He does something.
He
still
works in the football program.
And I had a conversation with Coach Penders, and I just literally made the decision that nobody's going to tell me that this is the end for me. And I listen. I got released in, I think it must have been the last week of spring training, so March.
And you were playing in Montana at the time,
well, no,
weren't you?
I was in spring training. So we were in Arizona. So I came home and I signed with an independent club. I get to the first week of workouts. Literally, I was there 2 days, and they released me because of roster opportunities. So here I had been released 2 times in literally a span of like 6 weeks. And I just kept working out, kept going to see Coach Baylock, kept talking to my buddies. And I just kind of, I wanted to make a commitment to figuring some things out. And I was lucky enough to catch on with an organization. There was an injury, an independent league organization. Had a really good rest of the year. Got signed by the Orioles, went to spring training the next year. It didn't work out with them, but I finished in independent ball. Had a really good year. But I was able to walk away from the game because I knew that over the span of those essentially 18 months, I put in every ounce of energy into figuring out what I needed to do to make my career successful and meaningful to me. I stopped playing for other people and the approval of, scouts and
reconnected with the passion for the game.
I figured,
this is why I love it.
Absolutely. And that passion is why I'm still doing it for 70 hours a week, up at our building, is because, right. And so getting on the topic of Nick, I just feel like for me, I take a lot of pride in my work. And I think that's something Nick and I why we got really close at school, is because we were those guys that were crazy enough to be hitting at 11 o'clock at night or going to extra 2 in the morning. Right. Like, can't sleep. Let's go hit, you know what I mean? Or like, let's go to the gym and take extra ground balls.
I know it to be true because Nick was the guy. He was an hour early for practice. He stayed an hour late. He was the guy when there was snow on the ground, but somebody had set up a cage next to the field. You and your brothers were in there working out in that cage, and I mean that's what it takes,
Right. Absolutely, and that's what connected us so early on, and ever since that time, I've kind of made it my, I take a lot of pride. I never taken for granted the fact that he comes home and asks me for my opinion or my insight, and we have, like I said, we have a group of professionals now that have guys that I've been training since. Since they were in high school, some of them just getting into high school. Now they're, first, second year professionals, and it's crazy. Those guys come back, and I'm always trying to make myself better because I just never take it for granted, and I don't think I don't think I ever will.
And they need you to get better all the time because the game changes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what makes Pete? I mean. It's clear why you guys have a connection as friends. You're it's beyond friendship. I mean, you spoke before about surrounding yourself with quality people. I know, Jay, we talk about that all the time,
Yep. Build up your weaknesses with other people's strengths, fill in those voids that you might have with someone who knows, this is the strength part, this is the mental part. Let them build you up into a whole. It takes every piece of the puzzle to make the big picture.
I like that thought a lot.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, and it makes sense. What makes him, as a professional athlete, the friendship aside, what makes him a great coach? And the reason I ask is because I want people to our biggest goal in doing these is we want something that is shared each week to resonate with someone. Jay and I say it all the time, and the response so far has been really, really good. But I don't care if one person hears it, 1,000 people hear it, or 1 million people hear it. The ability that we feel like we have to touch somebody else's life in a positive way is the only reason that we do this. That's our whole purpose. but I want a kid that's listening or that will listen in the next couple of days to say, wow, these guys met with some adversity. It wasn't easy for them. Yeah, he's a Major League Baseball player, but a lot of people don't know what you've been through this year alone. And we always talk about the importance of relationships, right? So what makes him a great coach for you?
So for me, it's taken to a new level this year. As I've come home this offseason and begun to train, we've got into some things where I think for the young athlete who may be advanced for their age or be an elite high school player, even college or professional player, it's not hard to find people who are going to tell you you're really good and pat you on the butt and not push you and not challenge you. But the one thing Pete's done, especially this offseason so far, is really challenged me to get better. And he's put me in some environments and situations where it kept me up in the middle of the night trying to figure out why the heck I was not able to do it.
Well, that's also you, too. I mean,
a little bit of me.
I mean, that's a lot you.
A lot of it of you.
Yeah.
But no,
I could picture him now staring at the ceiling, cursing
And
you.
you know
because
there's a bat by his bed.
Oh,
So
yeah.
don't think for 1 second he's not working on
I
it.
know,
Yeah.
and he's cursing you while he's doing it. And Amanda just wants to go to bed. He's like, man, Pete pissed me off so bad today.
So no, I mean, all jokes aside, it's not about anybody pissing me off. It's he really has challenged me to get better, and he's attacked my weaknesses and tried to make them strengths and put me in situations where they're really uncomfortable. And honestly, I haven't wanted to do it, but the thoughts popped into my head of this is stupid. Let's do something else where I'm going to be more successful and not look like an idiot and not fail over and over and over again. But that level of stress that he's placing on me is allowing me to adapt and get better. So I could go home or go to any person in the country to help me train in the off season, and they could push me and do some things that were a little bit challenging, but I don't think to the level that we're working on it here. So it's been really important for me to really attack and challenge and put myself in uncomfortable situations so I can adapt and get better constantly.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think it's a message that is great for everybody in any avenue of their life. We talk about it with our athletes all the time.
Well, you're not getting any participation trophies from him. It's
Right. I think at some level too, and this is kind of speaking off.
Point.
Yeah, and I think it's when you just get when you get to the basic of it or the basis of it, it's really what are we doing this for? Like I think a lot of people get complacent, and I was one of those guys. I like to, for our instance, I like to do the stuff that made me feel really, really good.
Everybody does.
Yeah, and to some degree, that's necessary at times. It absolutely is.
That balance.
Right, you have to have the balance. I just feel like a lot of times we rest on those things and we get really comfortable, and then it turns another, complacency. And I feel like you really don't know what you're capable of until your back is literally up against the wall. And in our case, when we're going through our skill sessions, when you're put through some stuff where it almost seems borderline ridiculous, seriously, like where you're like, wait a second. And then you start to really think, and then your mind becomes, aware that your body has the ability to adapt. And then you start to see crazy change happen.
That's
so,
right.
For us, whether it's hitting seriously 90 miles an hour from 30 feet away, that looks incredibly difficult the first time you see it, which is, I'm assuming what he's referring to literally a week later, he's
hitting the ball.
Well, he looks fantastic, and it just goes to show you the power of what you're capable of doing when you let yourself connect mind and body. Seriously.
Wow.
So.
I mean, I think about you too. Like, we've talked before how much respect I have for folks that are in your line of work, fire, police, military. But it's, it would be like for you. You could go through the academy. You could listen all day long about what it's like to go into a fire or a burning building. But I would imagine that you would never know
whole different ballgame.
until you
no
do
pun
it.
intended.
Until you do it, right? Like until you.
Yeah, until you. I mean, it's a totally different thing. So. I'm sure this translates over to sports, but you go in the fire academy, you have training fires, and you go into this big concrete building, and it's metal doors, and it's built to be
Withstand
burned up
fire
over and
all
over
the
again.
time.
But you're burning, pallets, or you're burning straw. So there's heat, and it's hot, and it's smoky, but it's not like when you get into the middle of a house that's got, basically a bunch of solid gasoline is what everything's made out of. All these plastics is just, it's super, super hot.
And at the academy, if you're in trouble, they'll pull you out.
You're all set. You've got a whole bunch of guys there. Where I work now, we have 4 or 5 people trying to do this job at once. We run with fairly short shifts, and it's a whole different thing. So kind of like with you guys, you make it to that professional spot. That's just the beginning. I mean, your game has just started there. And I wanted to ask you, Pete, was it hard for you at first to kind of call him out on his weaknesses and not just sort of coddle him because of the relationship that you guys have?
To be honest, not really. I think that's so to answer the question.
So John knew the answer to that ahead of
time.
time.
Right. But the thing, he knows us well enough. But I mean, I think the thing is, like the way I look at it is, I'm doing a disservice to him. You know what I mean? And this is not. This is his job. This is his career.
And you've been on the flip of that too, so that that's what's needed.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get
but
away
again,
with just.
I think some of that too is just understanding, some of the adversity he faced this year, and me really wanting to, come in. And this is not something I didn't just one day say, hey, we're going to start training like this. This is something I researched and thought about, conceptualized for months and months and months in advance. Something I had been working with other athletes across the country on, literally. And, it's just a different type of, methodology. And honestly, I think it was something that I viewed as being very important. And I think I even said, I'm like, hey, look, this is how I know we're going to do this. So, this is the angle I'm coming at. Like it or love it, this is what I feel is important. Yep. And like I said, we obviously came to some mutual agreement on the stuff that we were trying to, put forward as, for his career. So.
Right. And you care about him enough that,
please.
That you want to see him succeed.
Yeah,
so that's a huge part of
absolutely.
it.
I was going to say too, I didn't mean to interrupt, but just building on what you're saying, we have a good enough relationship to the point where I don't want to speak for him, but if he were to do something that was going to piss me off or vice versa, me to him, if it was out of love or trying to help one of us get better, we have the relationship where it's not going to break the friendship apart.
Right. So it's coming from the right place.
Yeah, for sure.
Not not just the right place based on the amount of love they have for one another, but it speaks to not just in this particular relationship, but in relationships in general, where you owe it to those people that you care about to push them. People, I have some really close friends, and one of the things I believe in very strongly is that you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the majority of your time with. So you need to choose wisely, but that is really based on trust. And that's developed over time. The approach you take with Nick now, it is not the same approach you guys had as teammates at UConn. The life changes. Your career has changed. You run a business now where you're trying to truly not just develop professional athletes to be better pros, but from little kids all the way up. And so your whole focus is on establishing trust with these families who, listen, people are willing to spend money in this day and age, and they have options, right? Mm-hmm. They have options for strength training. They have options for baseball instruction. They have options for summer ball. So that you have to continue to do it better. And the only, unless I'm missing something, it's predicated on trust and results, right? So, but that trust has been established for such a long time that I would think, if you share something with Nick, he's going to buy in initially because of the trust, because of what you've developed.
Absolutely. I think it speaks to relationships in general too, and it's not just Nick. It's if I have if I get a 12-year-old kid that comes in or a 15-year-old kid, my approach to a lot of guys is not to be the dictator and tell them necessarily just straight up tell them what they need to do. I try and get to have a little bit of self-discovery. I want them to kind of understand where I'm coming from, but my approach is very much trying to figure out who the person is in general. And obviously I've known Nick for, a long time now. So,
sure.
I think that's just an important thing in any relationship or coaching in general. You have to make time to figure out who, the people you're interacting with are, what they value, what they know, what they don't know, how they handle information,
how they handle adversity, criticism,
you have
stress,
to,
all
stress, everything. You
play,
have to, or else you're not going to do your job effectively. And anybody says that you can, I don't buy it, because it takes time and personal investment to see real change.
Are there things for you guys, Nick? We'll start with you as a personally and professionally. I do want to touch a little bit, or as much as you want, on your faith, because I know it is the foundation by which you live your life. It starts there with you, which I have so much respect and admiration for. But for both of you guys, are there things personally and professionally that are non-negotiable? In other words, I think Nick and Pete both understand what I'm saying, but for those of you that are viewing or are going to listen, I think it's important that we all have those things in our life that we will not bend on, and we have to stand for something. And so are there anything for you guys as you look at your training, your professional experience as a business owner and a coach, or personally with your beautiful wives and families that are non-negotiables?
So for me, I guess similar story to Pete in the regard that as a young professional baseball player, I put a ton of my identity, and this stemmed back from when I was in high school and college. A lot of my identity was in who I was as a baseball player. And I defined myself based on my success and my failure. And if I had a good day at the field,
then you were a good guy.
4 for 4. I was a good guy, and I treated my wife, who was my girlfriend and fiance at the time, treated her well. I was a good teammate in the clubhouse and did the right things, respected people. But if not, on the other side of the spectrum, if I had failure, and I had quite a bit of it in the minor leagues, just coming up, I didn't know how to handle it, especially with my identity so deeply rooted in baseball. So I'm very thankful that God kind of reestablished my identity and told me that I'm accepted and approved by Him, no matter if I never get another hit playing baseball, even if I play for however many years, whatever. So that's non-negotiable for me. God's taken me to a place where I can have peace and joy and fulfillment within the game and outside of the game, not based on anything I do or achieve, but all based on who He says I am. So for me, that's non-negotiable. And I had a chaplain a bunch of years back when I was first starting to understand some of my faith. He wanted us to make, it was a bunch of guys in the room, he wanted us to make a list of the 10 most important things in our life.
I think you told me about this.
Yeah, it was pretty cool because every one of us, we listed out different things, whether it was career or family or wife or kids, different things. God could be on the list, or hobbies, or whatever, anything.
Anything in your life, yeah.
So all of us made a list of 10 things, and then our chaplain asked us, he said, so where do you think God goes on that list? And I think every one of us to the man said, I think God should be at the top. And he's challenged us to...
The right answer in a room with a chaplain.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't feel that way, right?
He's challenged us to rethink that. And the more I've read the Bible and understand how God wants to be in relationship with us, it's more about having Him in every one of those 10 areas of my life. And not making God some separate area, but having Him be in control of every part of my life.
Walks with you every step of the way.
Yeah. So that for me is the non-negotiable thing in my life. And then secondary after that is my family. I'm going to do what's best for my wife and my son no matter what. Whether that's something to do with my career, outside my career, they're my number one priority. So those are
awesome.
The top two, I guess.
Appreciate that.
I mean, it's making me think watching you drink your coffee and if you had 10 cups and each one of them was a different part of your life, baseball, family, if you're filling each one of those cups up to begin with God, then you have more in there than people have if they're trying to start from an empty glass. So,
for sure.
Just more fulfillment.
That's a great point. It's a great way to put it too. I think, it was important for me to bring it up, and for you, I kind of assumed that would be at the top of the list and the non-negotiable. But I just think it's great for people to hear, because I think when you think of professional athlete or someone with notoriety, someone who makes a very healthy living fiscally to play a game, people can get wrapped up in that, right? And wrapped up in all of the other stuff. But for you, it's none of that. It's your faith and your family. And then knowing you the way that I do, I would argue that probably that third F right behind it is your valued friendships, And it's a pretty simple way to live, but it's beautiful in the sense that it doesn't have to complicate your life all that much.
Definitely. I heard a really good quote the other day. I think it was actually by Denzel Washington, the actor. And he said something to the effect of, you never see a U-Haul being pulled behind a hearse. So, I mean, no matter how much money I make playing baseball or however much his business profits,
sure,
we're all going to get to the end of our lives.
Sure.
And you can't take a cent with you after you're gone. So the things that do matter, the relationships, and the impact you have on people. And I mean, I've seen the fruit of that in my life over the last 4 years, and it's radically changed how I just interact with people, the type of dad and husband I am, and it's going to continue to grow and develop.
Yeah, it never stops, right?
Yep.
Try to get better every day. How about for you, Skipper? Anything personally, professionally that's a non-negotiable?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, it goes without saying, my family. I mean, like I said, my wife Missy, I don't know if she's watching. I don't know if she figured out how to watch. No idea. But
Well, this one will go on.
it'll go on? Okay.
Yeah.
So
First, there'll be an
foremost-
audio version and a video
nice.
version.
Okay.
We'll get you guys set up.
All right, perfect. So, my relationship with her, it's
You better say that.
Oh, well, yes, of course, goes without saying. I mean, she's, and Nick can attest to this. They go through a ton. Just whether you're in the minor leagues in college.
Yes.
Driving up to UConn on a Friday to hang out with us for a couple days while we're playing a weekend schedule or something like that. And I know how much she has sacrificed for me. So I can't begin to say how appreciative I am of that. And obviously my 2 kids, Brooke and Bryce.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy how time. We just had this. We had a little bit of a leadership talk. Actually, yesterday the devotion was about time, right? Mm-hmm. And we were talking about how fast time goes and how appreciating time. And I think sometimes, we all fall into the trap of looking ahead instead of staying in the moment.
And being present, right, Nick?
Where your feet are. I tell you, that's something you guys used to say. Absolutely.
I learned it from him,
right,
and
right.
I passed it along to everybody.
Right, it's fantastic. I mean, being where your feet are. And sometimes as a business owner, I'm always looking at, like, what's the next thing we can tackle? Where can we go from here? And I forget that I'm sitting in, one of 2 beautiful buildings. My best friend is in the major leagues with a colleague of mine who's influenced hundreds of my athletes on a podcast. Sometimes I
Pretty
just forget,
cool.
Yeah, and you just forget that, you're working. You forget to live, right now. Sometimes you're so busy working.
It's the only thing we have
life.
Control over.
Right, and sometimes you're so busy working on your life that you forget to be in the moment and in your life.
Yeah,
So
it's a great point.
So my family goes without saying. I actually thought about this when you sent me the notes, and I was trying to think of another way of approaching the question, and it was, for me, it was hard work, and it was discipline. And the reason why I say those things is because I think about every moment in my life, whether it's my career, as a coach, as a business owner, as a friend, as a husband, as a father. Everyone and everything, everyone goes through adversity. So everybody's going to be put in times when there's things that don't go their way, or there's opportunities that don't come through, or somebody disappoints you. And managing your way through that oftentimes can be difficult. And I feel like who I am as a person and working extremely hard and being disciplined in my beliefs and my convictions has gotten me through a lot of hard times.
Without a doubt.
Or things that have happened. For me personally, it's something I attribute to athletics. And that's why I'm so invested in preaching a positive message and having guys like Nick around and his brother. And
you've made it. I mean, at this point, you've made it your life's work.
Exactly. It's so much more than just baseball. It's honestly.
It's more than baseball, and it's more than business.
Right. It's more than business. It's about investment. And I feel like for me, when I thought about my non-negotiable, I'm never going to be outworked from a perspective of, yes, general work ethic, I feel like, but I'm never going to let a situation ultimately bring me down to the point where, I feel like I'm out of control. Like I always am going to work and push and try and maintain, some level of discipline in my life. So, closer?
No, I think he's saying
closer?
I'm breathing too heavy.
Yeah, I
into the
think he's
microphone.
saying
Too many squats. Yeah.
I think he's saying John's too close.
My fault.
What are you talking about?
I was looking back and forth. I'm like, did
Clean
I
up
say
that
something?
posture.
Did I?
Yeah, right.
I forgot.
No,
I was looking at
you're
Nick.
right. You're
I'm not
absolutely
gonna lie.
right.
I've looked at him the half time. Like, dang, my shoulders are brutal right now. So much. This is not good.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
I know.
But that makes me think about
Don't look this direction.
why? Because your posture
Oh,
sucks.
it's horrible.
Yeah, I'm hurting a little bit today. Hi, Donnie. Anything you want to share? We haven't included you yet, and I miss you.
I miss my mic.
You do, don't you?
Pretty bad.
I know. We miss having you on the mic.
Sure.
But now it's so much easier to torture you. You can't rebuttal. We talked about the non-negotiables. A couple things that the biggest challenge you faced as a business owner, and advice you would give to somebody who was 22, 23 years old that had the same mission and mindset that you had. So what have you learned along the way that you wish somebody told you that would have saved you a lot of time, hours, and money, maybe. And what's the biggest challenge you faced? And then Nick, same thing for you professionally. You know?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, I'm pretty. I mean, I'm pretty
these
good
are
at this.
These are fantastic.
Yeah, this is what I do.
One thing one piece of advice that I would give.
Woo! Give me some love, Jason. That's what I do, Pete.
So that's great, but I just realized we're going to have a great video from this, and I mentioned earlier I'm going to forget to hit the record button, right? Well, I did hit the record button at the beginning, but I didn't empty the card, so the card filled up. So
that's all right.
So we have the first half. They're just going to have to watch the video for the whole thing.
Nice.
Perfect. So, Don, this is all on your shoulders. Yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah.
No pressure.
And we'll come back. We'll do another one.
Right.
Get dialed in, Kev. Okay? It's what you do. It's what you do. It's what I do. It's what you do. Skipper.
Yeah, sorry.
I digress.
No. So something that I've learned along the way, I feel like the number one thing that I have learned along the way would have to be.
I know there's probably a lot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's tons of things that I wish I knew, and there's things that I'm still not very good at.
Learning every day.
I think the biggest thing is
there are some things that you're still not good at.
Right. There's plenty.
I totally
agree.
There's
plenty. That's nice. There's plenty of things I'm not good at. The one because I don't know. It's just innate. I always joke I get it from my mother, and I think the message for me that I need to get better at is just being able to be honest, be forthright, and say what I need to say and say it kindly. And that's got to be my approach. And I think sometimes for me as a business owner, you want to be able to do everything. You want to be kind of like a jack of all trades,
juggle everything and please everyone.
And it's hard because you don't mean to do it, but sometimes I feel like communication in general, it can be difficult. So I think managing communication and just making sure that you're always like I said, you're always, managing relationships properly too. And then the second thing I would say for anybody looking to do this, the advice would be do it. If you're passionate about it, I can't even believe that I have a job that I work with athletes and my friends and major league, caliber baseball players on a daily basis. I can't even believe it, and
it must be unbelievable for you. I would think, even as I've coached for a long time, right? And at the high school level, the goal is to try to shape, at least for me, the goal was always to try to shape young men, right? To make young men better young men, and using sports as that avenue, that vehicle for change. Right. And there's no question that you do that with your athletes, but it must be amazing for you to see a kid, and I could point to so many that I've watched at the academy over the years, not just transform as young men, but go from hardworking kids and talented kids, but now having a chance to play at the highest level. It's got to be pretty rewarding.
It is. We just celebrated our 5th class 2 days ago at a NLI day, signing day. We had 9 guys, 7 signed their Division I letters of intent at our academy, and over 40 people with food. And
it's awesome.
And I'll be honest,
so awesome.
And I think again, it's something that I don't want to say you take for granted, but the kids that came into our building, most of those kids have been there since they were freshmen.
I know they have. Some before then?
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that you don't really realize the impact you have on people until it kind of all culminates and you have a parent come up to you and say thank you. You don't even realize it. Sometimes you just get so caught up in the day-to-day
tunnel vision.
Hey, listen,
just
like
go to work.
With Nick, like literally we're going to work today. Like there's we're working, and my intentions are always what I believe to be best. I always put the athlete first. At least I try to as often as I can. And, frankly, I just don't think you realize the positive influence you can have on somebody and then all of a sudden you have a day where, like I said, on Saturday we had, 9 guys sign their NLIs, and you look and you see the family, and I'm in the middle of giving a speech, and I'm just, the first thing I can think of saying is thank you. Like, you guys are all here, but for me, it's like a thank you for believing in the message that I've put out there. When I started,
you had enough faith and trust in me to
it's unbelievable.
Work with your kids.
It's unbelievable, and it's their, like Nick and I both said, it's our most precious commodities. Our kids are under 2 years. Essentially under 2 years old, and like I would do anything to see them get what they need.
Opportunity.
Heck, I get fired up when my daughter puts her shoes on.
Yeah, that's right.
Like on the right feet.
Yeah,
like the same color.
Absolutely.
We do that when John gets his right.
That's what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
These are big. They're small victories, but
yes. Yes.
We're working to get better every day.
Right. But it's something I
You
will
feel better now? I mean, do you feel better
No,
when you hurt somebody
I'm
else's
very,
feelings?
I'm taking you
Mr.
down.
Positivity?
I'm very disappointed in myself for letting that happen.
You should
so.
be. You should take that sweatshirt off. You don't deserve to wear it right now.
No, I would say that's it's been
These are our guests.
it's been the the good fortune we've had, and I try and make sure I'm always well aware that people are, it's a service first and foremost, but it's most importantly relationships, and it's that I can't tell you how much I value that.
No doubt. Thank you.
Yeah.
How about you, Nick?
So I have a couple things I've learned along the way. I've learned many, but 2 lessons that really stick out. The first is something Pete's kind of touched on quite a bit about adversity. And early on, I think our culture kind of creates this message that adversity is a bad thing. And for me, that's kind of how I always thought and viewed it growing up. And if I struggled or I failed or something bad happened, it was a negative.
Adversity equals failure.
Yeah, and I did something wrong, or I'm not good enough, or whatever. But over the course of the last 6 or 7 years, I've really started to develop a better understanding of adversity and of failure. And there's a great Bible verse that says, "Consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds." And it doesn't say consider it okay or consider it joy, but it says consider it pure joy, which is completely countercultural. It makes no sense in the eyes of the vast majority of people. Yeah, but the more I've come to understand that, and the more I can now step back and step away from my circumstance and see how there's actually a way that I'm going to get better through it, or an opportunity to help somebody because of it. Now I can view the situation differently. It's not necessarily a negative, it's now a positive.
That's awesome, yeah.
And it takes a lot of growth and perspective, and I'm still learning that in different areas of my life, but the lesson, I guess, would be to just view adversity in a different light. Don't let it tear you down, but give it a chance and use it as an opportunity to build yourself back up and build other people up as well.
And you've certainly met with some of it this year.
Yeah, I had
physically.
Had
a tough year.
This year. I had 2 injuries where in the last 4 years, or essentially in a 13-month span, I had 4 surgeries. So it was a tough stretch physically, but a lot of really good things have come out of it that would never have come out of it if I was healthy and never had those things. So I would never go back and change any of it. Obviously, I don't like the pain and the surgeries and all that kind of stuff, but wouldn't change a thing.
Because it's part of a bigger plan than we don't yet understand. We just have to trust.
Yeah.
It must make that taste that much better at the end too, when you overcome those obstacles and you push through those things and you're still able to get back to where you were and even further up the ladder.
Yeah, it does. It's gratifying because there's a lot of people who give up and come and sulk in the corner. So I'll share a quick story. I think you've heard it.
Please, please do.
About the buffalo and the cow.
Please do.
So I heard this story. This was right after I broke my arm this year, so it was a perfect time for me to hear it. In Colorado, in the Rocky Mountains, there's a lot of plains. Right after the crest of the mountains, there's these huge plains, wide open fields. And there's buffaloes and there's cows that roam on the plains. And when storms roll in over the top of the Rocky Mountains, the cows and the buffaloes have 2 different approaches. The cows get scared of the storm. They see it roll over the mountains, and they turn around and they try to run in the opposite direction. And cows obviously are not very fast, so them moving essentially in a slow run or walk in the same direction of the storm, what it does is it keeps them in the storm for a much longer period of time. They're just traveling with the storm. So essentially they're running away. They're not facing it head on. And they're enduring much more punishment and rain and whatever from the storm. So on the other hand, the buffaloes, they see that storm come over the mountain, and they take the opposite path. They turn around and they run headfirst straight into the storm. And initially, they're going to get beat up or whatever by the rain and the lightning or whatever might come. But they get through that storm way quicker and with way less pain and destruction to their bodies and in the area that they're in. So for me, I want to be a buffalo. I want to take that storm and that adversity and face it head on, not cower behind it and run in the opposite direction or sit in the corner and sulk about it. I want to face it head on, learn something through it, help somebody else because of it, and get through it that much quicker.
It's awesome.
So
Powerful
kind of a
message.
corny
That's a
story
great
about
story.
buffaloes and
Actually,
cows,
not
but,
at all.
There's a good message.
The message is unbelievable. I can't tell you. I hope this has been as enjoyable for you guys as it has been for us. One of the things that we talked about before, and this is the only thing that I did not prep you guys for. We're gonna
Great.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Lightning round.
Actual lightning, yes.
Kind of. So we're
The
gonna
storm. Get ready.
we're gonna put you guys on the spot right now. I'll start with Nick, and then Jason, if you're good with it, I'll have you do it with
Sure.
Pete, and it'll maybe give you both of us a chance to kind of think of. So I'm gonna give you 4 or 5 words, singularly. So I'm gonna give you one without thinking too much. First thing that comes to mind, right out of the gate. All right. So
All
I may
right,
share
let's do
one.
it.
I may share one word, one phrase, but first thing that comes to mind. We'll give you a chance to get your head right over there and try to prepare for this. But Jay's going to throw you some curveballs, so just get ready.
Perfect.
Ready?
Pete can hit a curveball, by the way.
Debatable.
Listen,
I've
can we
seen
just
it plenty of times.
before we do this? Can we just talk about when Mr. Yardball's getting back in the
Oh
cage?
boy.
That's not.
You guys want to share that
Wait,
with any of our
I
viewers?
think
or
Donnie
listeners?
might be able to attest to Mr. Oddball. What do you think? Can he hit?
I have no comment.
Skipper.
I've seen it.
You've worked with the best of the best.
I've seen it.
You both.
Barefoot. Yes.
You both have seen me in the cage.
Yes, we have
Is there potential there? Let me just ask that.
plenty of potential.
If you had me as a spring chicken, so if I was like 10 or 11 or 12
Yeah.
years old,
yeah.
could
Was lacrosse around back then?
It
no?
wasn't.
So, okay.
are you
Spring soccer?
are you suggesting I pick up a
That's
different
right.
sport?
You were
entirely?
much better at hitting people on the
Maybe
gridiron.
tetherball.
Ah, man. That was not very good. But I coined a new phrase at the academy.
Yes.
Nick was supposed to work on getting merchandise made, yard ball
Yard ball?
merchandise.
Yeah, that's true.
We could copyright that and it would take off.
It hasn't caught on. Sorry.
Did you try?
Yeah, it hasn't caught on.
At all?
No.
You know why? Because all
No
you guys are
traction.
way too savvy. You have all these other corny baseball cliches. So when you tried to share yard ball, you were like, "Hey, this guy," you're like, "That's just stupid."
Yeah.
Did you try for me, honestly?
Yeah, it didn't go anywhere.
Nick's got a room of yard ball t-shirts.
On consignment.
For anybody who wants
yeah,
a
right. You
yard
took a
ball
shot
shirt,
and made thousands of them, and they're sitting. I'll take them. You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Humility.
To me, that means thinking of others before yourself. Not easy, but something I'm still trying to get better at.
Faith.
Just having a good understanding of who God is and who I am, and knowing it's about relationship and not something I can earn or attain.
Hard work.
I think it's going to mean different things to different people. There's going to be different levels of my hard work versus your hard work, but you have to balance, obviously, life circumstances, but just giving it everything you got, knowing you can push yourself past what you think you can initially do.
2018 Major League Baseball season.
It's going to be a great year for the Diamondbacks. We're going to build on a great 2017. We're going to continue to grow and get better and hopefully beat the Dodgers in the first round of the playoffs and get some revenge there and then win the World Series.
I love it. Last but not least, Pete Fatse.
Oh, man. Pete, he's
First thing that comes to mind. Let's go.
nicknamed the Dude.
It's true.
He is a great friend. Known him for going on almost 10 years now, probably. Great friend. He's done an unbelievable job with me in my career. I would trust him with my family any day of the week. And just everything he's done with AP Academy has been really special to watch. And I want to throw this in there real quick. But initially, when we were both playing professionally, we had this vision when we were done playing to open this business and help young athletes and give back. And Pete has kind of jumped the gun on that one.
yeah, he did
I
wait
got done
for
playing a
you.
little bit
patience,
sooner.
and, he didn't
Zero
wait for me very
patience.
much, so.
Nope.
But
Nope.
you know him, man. He has
Yeah.
no patience.
Right.
What was he supposed to do? You could
probably
be
had-
doing it for the next 10 or 15
know, I
I probably
years.
had
Yeah,
3 cups
maybe.
of coffee before the conversation anyways.
Yeah, and listen, you already knew when you were having that conversation or when you were headed home and being like, okay, it's time to do something else. Yeah, I'm not waiting for Nick. We're getting rolling here.
It's true. It's very true.
But when you talk a lot about perspective, right?
Yeah.
So think about this. Think about what you'll be walking into when your career is finished.
Sure.
Yeah, it'd be pretty cool.
Right?
Just to think, I shared this with you before we started, but from Pete's senior year all the way down to my brother's Mike's senior year, a 5-year span, we had 5 Division I baseball players come out of all of Western Mass.
I know.
And I think Pete said 65 in the last 5 years. So
That's amazing.
Obviously, we don't want to just put numbers on everything and make his business or whatever he's doing about his numbers, but it's pretty special. And just
Says
hearing
something.
the people talk about the way they've impacted their sons' lives and their families' lives is awesome.
Yeah, it
Thanks,
says
guys.
something about developing the complete athlete, right? So
Yes.
awesome job. You have no chance.
I'm not gonna lie.
You-
With every comment, I think I looked over at Donnie and was like, "How am I gonna compete?" with
You know,
this?
I can't wait. I'm just going to sit
Oh
back
my
and drink this
gosh.
in.
All right,
Have at it,
take
my
it
friend.
easy on
All
me,
right,
brother.
so
No,
lightning
hey,
round.
listen, do not take it easy on him.
I'm still trying to think of the word, so this is as much on me as his.
Perfect.
But we'll start with success.
I think success for me has become impacting more people and seeing other people's success, how well they do, and ultimately just seeing other people's success and taking it as just being very appreciative for the small role that I have, in other people's lives.
Makes you significant.
Yeah, it makes me significant, exactly.
And you're right, you can't compete with Nick.
I can't.
Hold on, Ray. We're just getting
Where's
started.
Don's
we need,
mic for
we
this?
need at least 3 or 4 more. Well
Don's on
played.
fire.
He needs a mic.
I know, he's
He's so
fantastic.
good with this all the time.
All
Sorry.
right. Good answer. Next word, value.
Value. I think the number one thing that I've started to value the most is my time, per our conversation a little bit earlier, and trying to use my time. It's essentially the most important commodity that I have, that we all possess, that we don't get any more of. So I'm trying to learn to value my time more, and to value, not only what I spend my time doing, but who I spend my time with. So
Awesome.
Great. How about failure?
it's inevitable. You're going to fail. So I think baseball teaches you a humble lesson. It's the best game, in my opinion, for that reason. You fail 7 out of 10 times, and that's considered success. I think it's all about how you embrace failure and your perspective going in. Like Nick had said earlier, if you use failure to define you versus using it as an avenue to elevate you, that's how I define failure.
Awesome. And we got to end, I guess, on positivity.
Absolutely. I think positivity is a characteristic. I think it's contagious. I think when you are positive in general, you elevate people around you. And like I said, that's kind of been a new thing, a new slogan that we've had with our academy, is we want to elevate people. And that's not just on, like Nick said, it's not just about statistics. It's not about Division 1, 2, 3 opportunities to play in college. It's about elevating people through how we interact with people on a daily basis. And I don't think you can do that without having positivity in your life. So
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you guys being on. Thanks so much for welcoming us into the facility. It's been great having this conversation with you guys. We're going to have to do it again because the audio flub. But we'll have a video to put out. It'd be great to do a follow-up episode.
Sure.
And man,
Yeah, I just
what a great time.
It was awesome.
Very
and
cool.
just from a personal standpoint, I'm more than grateful to you two for doing this. But beyond that, just our friendship, the relationship that we've had, Nick and Pete, for some time now. Thanks for welcoming us into the new home. Just a quick plug. And I don't. Do you want me to talk at all about the open house on?
absolutely.
So we there's going to be an open house this Sunday. Which is the
19th
the 19th of
1 o'clock.
November. It starts at 1 o'clock here at the East Longmeadow facility. Pete has arranged a day where he's welcoming in families and athletes from the area. He's going to have a sort of discussion-based format where he's going to have a lot of his pro athletes. I'll be here as well. He'll have his strength and conditioning folks here, and Pete will be here certainly as sort of the face of the academy to talk about their strength programs and his athletes, both current and past. We'll talk about their experiences with the academy. But it's this Sunday, the 19th at 1 o'clock. The public is welcome to come in. Pete's asking that if you could, please pre-register for it so we have an idea how many people we're going to have at apacademyma.com. Again, to Pete and Nick, I can't thank you guys enough for doing this. Be good to those you love. Let them know you love them. Thank you guys so much. Until next time.
Take care, guys. Peace.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for listening to the Hashtag Positivity Podcast. Online at hashtagpositivity.org, on Facebook at Hashtag Positivity, and Instagram, the official Hashtag Positivity. If you liked the episode, please rate and review. And remember, positivity is contagious. Sprinkle that madness everywhere. We'll catch you.